just not sure that Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate I've got Bryan Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a championship defense. And Mitch, I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you thought you were going to get Zion, that's your bad.
You are now listening to Open Season. Your host, Billy Allen.
Welcome. Thanks for hanging with us in the snow. It's Billy Allen and Frank Bratica. This is Open Season. A little bit earlier tonight, everybody. 7 o'clock. Bryan Murphy produces the show. Let's open up the phone line, 617-702-2542. We are live from Seasons 52 here in Chestnut Hill, talking about everything in terms of the Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl wrap-up show. Tom Brady's got 7 rings. Gronk has 4. Belichick's got 6. Probably won't spend a whole lot of time on that. It's all about the legacy of Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Bruce Arians, everybody kind of forging a new legacy with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're talking about how they established it. Will the Chiefs be back next year? What do we think about Mahomes? But first, let's play a little bit of audio from the winners. Couple ex-Patriots, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Sounded like a couple little schoolgirls after the win.
Way to go, buddy. This is what we do. This is what we do. This two tutties. Two tutties. I was saving them for the Super Bowl. You did it all! You balled out, baby. You balled out. Way to go. You let us hit, dog. Way to go. Yes. So proud of you.
What? There you have it, the tutties. And seems like it's going to be a pretty tough decision for Brady, really weighing the decision if he's going to come back.
Celebrate with them, too. And there's more to come, right, Tom? There's more to come as far as football.
Yeah, we're coming back.
We're coming
back.
You know that. Coming back. Tom Brady's coming back.
They gave him an opportunity to play the family card. Hey, I just won a second to be with my family. I just won the Super Bowl. But no, we're running it back. Frankie, we're sitting here after Tom Brady's 7th Super Bowl, and he was really instrumental. A lot of Patriots instrumental in getting this win. Obviously, the Buccaneers' defense played really well. How's this win sitting with you? What are your first thoughts?
This is great. And don't get me wrong, I understand there's far too much coverage on the quarterback, especially after the game that we saw. I mean, in his last 2 Super Bowl wins, his defenses have allowed a combined 12 points. Let's not get ridiculous. But in the totality of his career, listen, this is fantastic. Like, there's no reason to hate on this. He has more rings than the Patriots or the Steelers. Like, this is something that we should all marvel at and appreciate, whether we like it or not. I mean, this is great. And I'll stand by. Look, I didn't like how he got his way out of here. I didn't like Gronk retiring because it wasn't fun anymore. Like, I think all those things were soft. I am not a fan of how they carried themselves. But look, they got right back after it, didn't they? I mean, as soon as he was rejuvenated, back disrupting COVID protocols in high schools and breaking into Byron Leftwich's neighbor's house and all of it. Like, you shouldn't. There's nothing you can't love about this.
Yeah, and you're talking about how he was breaking protocols. How about after the game, no mask in sight for Tom Brady? You got to love that. I mean, he's just in all of his glory, no mask or anything like that. And, it's just it's really incredible what they were able to do. I feel like for me, I don't think this was a team that was a super team. I think it was a team with a lot of people that were kind of tossed off to the side. I mean, obviously Tom Brady, everybody knew that would give Tampa Bay a chance to compete, but a lot of these guys, Rob Gronkowski, Jason Pierre-Paul, Ndamukong Suh, a lot of these guys had just kind of like fallen off. They weren't wanted as much as, and it was just kind of like Brady really galvanized this team. He really made this team believe that they could, and their defense played the best for him in the most crucial spots.
So they have a very young secondary. So they didn't have McFarland last year. He was, very, very helpful for them. And their corners are very young. Murphy Bunting and Davis being a year older helped. But Tom Brady's impact, the Brady effect, if you will, wasn't necessarily that those guys played better. Those guys played well last year. They had the number 1 rush defense in the league last year. The buy-in, That was one of the least disciplined teams in the league. And for 20 years, we said, listen, you know why we've never had a touchback? Because our players don't extend the ball at the goal line. We're coached. That's Belichick. Turns out, it's kind of Brady sometimes, isn't it? Like, as it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think Brady just really gave them the thought process that they could actually compete. Like, we say that Brady doesn't play both sides of the ball. You know, obviously they needed a defense to do well, but I really just think that they got that defense to buy in and to think that they had a chance. I mean, we saw it up here this year with Cam Newton. You know, it's just like felt like the defense didn't play as well because they just didn't give him as good of a shot, you know, knowing that Cam Newton's going to throw the ball into the ground every other time. And you just feel like Tampa Bay, they really played their best defense down the line. They didn't have the best personnel, but they were just able to bring a great package. And, I mean, I don't think anybody could have seen Patrick Mahomes playing this poorly. He said it himself. It was probably, you know, one of the worst games of his career. It definitely was. Everybody's got that stat of 497 yards that he ran post-snap. Tampa Bay just had him running around all night.
I think this was a horrible performance from Reed. I mean, I think this was a tour de force of all the things that we questioned about Andy Reid prior to receiving Mahomes. The time management. I mean, the timeouts at the end of the first half when they were clearly content to just run out the ball. The musical chairs on the offensive line. Why not just keep the right side of your offensive line intact and run away from their pressure? As opposed to moving your right tackle over to left tackle, kicking your right guard out, bringing up a guy who hasn't started all year to the inside of your line, and now, with your undersized running back coming off of his high ankle sprain, you have nothing. And for the record, even if you could work that off, you're not even going to run the ball enough to figure it out. You're not going to give your team and have enough patience to work that level when you don't have protection. I mean, he made no adjustments.
Yeah, and I think that with Reed being kind of propped up this week, a lot of people are saying, you know, if he wins, is he as good a coach as Belichick? You know, is he maybe a good a coach as Belichick, maybe better? I think you definitely have to give him a lot of criticism because it was like everybody was looking for the Chiefs to come out with a better game plan in the second half, and they just didn't. I mean, Todd Bowles was able to pretty much run the same defense all night. You know, they just kind of played into their hands. And just in terms of not creating anything too creative for Tyreek Hill to get open, for Kelsey, he obviously didn't really have a big impact. They just kind of kept those guys in check all night long.
Again, it's a lack of adjustments. Where 48 of 52 snaps that you drop back to pass, there was 5 people blocking. Where's your like? At some point, your running back can't run routes anymore. At some point, you can't have 4 or 5 receivers in routes because it's not working. You don't have time to get them the ball. Like, where's your draw play? Where's your screens? Where's the plays that take advantage of the over-aggressive defensive line? They ran a cover 2 all night with 4 guys rushing, and they pounded you into dirt.
Yeah, and I just think that we've seen Andy Reid look like an offensive genius for such a long time. Him with the combination of Mahomes. I mean, I thought that if Mahomes had a bad game, it would still probably be with 3 touchdown passes attached to it. You just didn't really see him. You didn't see that offense. You really didn't see any way that offense was only going to be held to 3 field goals.
I mean, look, this is reminiscent of the Eagles Super Bowl for the Patriots, the second one. When your big guys spend all night losing, you're probably going to lose. Independent of what you average your skill positions, independent of the coach, independent of the quarterback. And in this particular game, you got outcoached anyway. You weren't going to win this game. Like, very early on, as a gambler, oh, you could have bet your mortgage. You could have bet your mortgage on the Buccaneers. Very early on, the Chiefs were overwhelmed. They were maybe the least poised defending Super Bowl champion I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's like not a shot. They're very, very young. I think Mahomes will get back here. I don't think he's Marino. But last night was bad.
Yeah, and it looked really easy for the Bucs really early on. I mean, even Gronk's first touchdown, he kind of like walked in. I mean, it was just the 2 touchdowns to Gronk just looked easy. The way that they were catching ball, you know, Mike Evans, he only had 1 catch for 31 yards, but that was like pretty early on. That just looked easy. And I feel like Kansas City kind of hung their heads early. They kind of kept making the crucial mistake. We were talking about it before we jumped on tonight, just in terms of every time it seemed like they were getting momentum, it's the Kelsey big drop or the bad punt, and it just seemed like every time they were building any type of something, you know, they just kind of fumbled it out of their hands and just they weren't ready for that moment. You heard a lot of things from Kansas City, like they were playing this like a regular away game. Maybe they should have played it a little bit differently. Maybe they should have played it like it was a Super Bowl, a game that you needed to get up for. And not saying they did nothing, but in terms of just getting there late and you know, only really playing like it was just any regular away game, maybe they should have done something different.
it's just abundantly clear that one of these teams was hell-bent on winning, and one of these teams felt like they could win, maybe they should win. Like, I never got the feeling that the Chiefs felt that they were a vastly superior team than the Buccaneers. I think they expected to win and play with a lead, and as soon as that didn't happen, the body language got bad, and they played horribly.
Yeah, I mean, you looked at Mahomes sometimes with him hanging his head. You would have assumed they were down by 20, or it just seemed like really early on they were out of sync, out of rhythm. It was like they're so used to Hill getting 100 yards in the first quarter, or he had like 200 yards in the first game against Tampa, and I feel like Tampa just felt like a team that they thought they could compete in this game. Like, if you listen to Tampa, they got down in the first quarter against the Kansas City, the first game they played them, and they were down, but they played a better game than Kansas City did the last three quarters of the last time they matched up, and this just played like a team that they were pretty confident that they were a good match for Kansas City.
I guess my biggest issue is Patrick Mahomes, and again, you have the stat, it's 500 yards of him running for his life. So obviously you would have liked to have seen his team play better around him to provide a better game as a consumer. I'd still give his performance isolated in a vacuum like a D. I mean, yes, he was running for his life, but even when he didn't have to, he was still escaping the pocket real early, still bailing out of plays very early. And I understood there was some unbelievable, and I said it before the show, shortstop-like throws. I mean, some of those throws nobody can make. That's why Mahomes is Mahomes. And the double doink, I mean, 2 face masks, that's really tough. The drop on third down from Kelsey, you mentioned it. I mean, mentally, none of that team was there.
Yeah, I do want to make this point, though. Obviously, Andy Reid is not going to coach forever, and they're not going to have the perfect blend of everything that the Patriots dynasty did. Whether it was Belichick taking over at an age where he could go for 20 years. Reid's not going to be able to do that. But I do see, like you said, Kansas City coming back and being a team, maybe they don't make it this year, but a lot of people are like, Mahomes will never make another one. Or I heard Brandon Marshall today talking about, Mahomes may not get back to this spot. I just couldn't disagree more. I think that Kansas City is just a team that's poised with Mahomes here. I think they definitely have a really good next couple of years, and I would be shocked if they don't get to any, like if Mahomes doesn't make a Super Bowl over the next 5-year period.
They've got 2 for sure. And then we'll see how good. That's when you see how good your coach and GM are. Once your quarterback starts making upper 30s and lower 40s millions of dollars. Next year, I believe his extension isn't fully kicked in. I believe the year after that is the first year that it's fully kicked in, but it's not quite 40 yet. I think it's like 36 or something, maybe even 34. The year after that, it's 40 and 38 and 38 and 38 and 38 and 40. So we'll see. And I believe Tyrann Mathieu' contract is perfectly timed up with the beginning of the contract extension from Mahomes. So we'll see what kind of team they can build around him for the next 2 years. They should be knocking on the door the next 2. We'll see the mental fatigue and how much this affects them. I don't think they'll be the Rams. I don't think they'll be Seattle. I don't think they'll be Denver. I think, and those are all in the last decade. I know those are historically great franchises, but once they lose, they really don't come back. I don't think that from this Chiefs team, but we'll see.
Yeah, because everybody wants to make the point that we thought that Russell Wilson was really poised for such success and to take over and kind of be the next Tom Brady. And I think people are just saying how hard it was for them to get back here. I just think Mahomes is that next guy up, is that special talent that we think he is. He is that guy who throws for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, has pretty much had an MVP caliber season all 3 years that he's been a professional. Josh Dodd brings up a good point, saying that, do you think Reid's son's tragedy was at all something that could have taken the focus off? And I think nobody really mentioned this during the week. You didn't really hear anything from ESPN, or it was almost like, there's a 5-year-old girl that's been in a coma that hasn't woken up since this happened. And, obviously that had to affect them in some regard.
They threw it in right at the trophy ceremony, and it felt really poorly shoehorned in. Like, with all the coverage that they had in a 6-hour broadcast, there was clearly better times to bring that up and to actually give more time to let that breathe. I just thought that was in poor taste. I don't know how big an effect it had, and I hate to say this like coldly and flatly. Pro athletes are largely narcissistic and very selfish and self-centered. Once you get to a Super Bowl, not many things outside of that are going to distract you. It might have distracted Andy Reid.
Sure.
But I don't know about the rest of the team.
I think your point's a good one, too. I don't think it probably distracted the rest of the team, but if it took Andy Reid away from it for any amount of time, I mean, just during a week where obviously your preparation is really crucial, I just was amazed that such a tragedy could happen without really hearing anything. It's just amazing that they've kind of put this under the rug. I mean, this is a guy that did jail time, actually, when he was with the Eagles organization. He's had 2 previous DUIs. This is going to be his 3rd one. So it's just it's amazing how that kind of gets swept under the rug. But obviously,
protect the shield. It's classic NFL.
Yeah, I mean, and with all this happening, the Tampa Bay kind of completing the mission and everything that was able to happen. Bruce Arians kind of talking about how he just let Tom Brady be him, and he was like, "You guys didn't do I didn't do anything. This is all yours." It seemed like he really it was like Brady wanted to go to an area where he thought that he could show that he didn't need Belichick, and it's like almost like they just found the perfect marriage for themselves over the next couple of years.
I just hope the narrative in this doesn't get lost, because in the beginning, they very clearly needed each other. I think this version of Brady probably since 2011 or so, could have won a Super Bowl with any of the 31 franchises. That's my belief. And Belichick, for his money, probably could win with, I don't know, the top 6-7 rosters. If Belichick was coaching the Chiefs, it would have been a different game. But here's the thing. A, Belichick is a mediocre GM, and he often coaches in spite of his draft picks. And
Mediocre's giving him some credit.
And B, listen, in the beginning, them challenging each other is, I think, what got the best out of each other. I don't want that narrative to get lost here, because I think Brady can go to the moon and win a Super Bowl now. But I don't think that the kid that was a 199th pick, I don't think that kid could have gone to any team in the NFL and brought that team a Super Bowl. It takes a while to learn how to win.
Yeah, and they just talk about Brady's insane preparation now. He's the first guy that I think he learned a lot of that from Belichick. I think you can't take that away, that he did learn the maniacal preparation from Belichick. He probably would not be the same competitor or have that spirit all the way through if Belichick was, patting him on the ass after the first Super Bowl or anything, rather than saying, you're like a rookie like the rest of us or whatever, and not giving him the special treatment. So I definitely think that he created something within Tom that wanted to, allow him to do better. But he did really prove that he could, like you said, go anywhere and be able to win.
I just want to say quickly, I love narrative fact from fiction. Like Bruce Arians saying, I let Coach Tom, I took a step back. All great probably happened, no doubt. I saw your team last year. Clearly Brady had something to do with that coaching. But even better than that, at the end of the day, the new article that came out where Gronk didn't practice Wednesdays and Brady didn't practice Wednesdays, he didn't practice Wednesdays here. Like, I love, and I said this from the beginning, I love professional middle fingers. I think it's great. I want this battle in the media. When it's all said and done in my lifetime, I'll see 3 books. That book Dynasty came out. Clearly, that was Kraft's fingerprints. When Belichick and Brady hang it up, we'll get a book from each side, and it's just going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I can only hope that we get books out of both those guys, and I think you just have to give some credit to. I just think it's funny how much credit Bruce Arians is getting for kind of just letting Brady be Brady.
Don't get in my way.
But it just does show. It just does show. I mean, you listen to all the guys on this roster talk about. It's like the first thing after. It's almost like Brady's getting too much credit now. Like this defense, they really balled out. They did great. They put such pressure on Mahomes, and Brady did a lot of good things too. He scored 30 points plus in every playoff game. So it's not like if they didn't have this defense, they couldn't have done it. But you just listen to these guys, and the first thing they're saying is how Brady is. And we've got one ringing through right now. We'll take it. You're live with Open Season. Who do we got?
It's Alex. Alex from Framingham calling in. Just want to say I think Bruce Arians isn't getting enough credit. I think Bruce Arians needs more credit. I think he needs all the credit.
All the credit.
Guess what?
The mastermind.
All the credit. The mastermind. I've been a Bruce Arians fan for years, guys. He is a stud. He's won Coach of the Year, and he was getting a raw deal all year. The media was criticizing him. Oh, he shouldn't be coming at Brady so hard. He shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. He was the perfect coach for this situation. The perfect coach. He called out Tom. He challenged Tom. He pushed him. He brought out the best in his guys while he took care of them. Let them know, hey, we're in this together. Didn't rule like with an iron fist. Yes, he challenged them, but that's part of the job. When you're dealing with the greatest of all time, you have to know how to push his buttons.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think you have a good point. I was listening to Arians talk about how like he would just give Brady kind of mental health days during this season and stuff, and you're putting your hands up. So maybe you heard this as well, or
I'd be willing to give Arians more credit if Arians was giving Arians more credit, or Devin White was giving Arians more credit, or quite literally anybody on that roster was saying anything besides this was Tom. It's a little overwhelming, and I don't know how much of it's fact from fiction, but clearly there was so much buy-in that their number, like everything he said, they were in awe of him. And it probably helps that it was a very young roster, but everybody bought in. I mean, everybody on that team. They're not talking about Bruce Arians' pregame speech.
I will say this, though, before we get back to Alex. He did Tom Brady, he gets the trophy, and pretty much in the first 5 seconds after he gets the trophy is talking about how Bruce Arians put together a good game plan, and you just never heard Brady talk about this about any other coach. I mean, I actually heard him one of the days during his press conferences. He went on for 6 minutes about Bruce Arians. I mean, so I do think Alex has a good point where they all just kind of did believe in Bruce Arians, or the fact that at least Bruce Arians was going to let Brady do whatever he wanted.
He wasn't going to get in Brady's way.
Go ahead, Alex. What else?
No, I mean, that's really it, man. I just feel like Belichick has been getting too much credit for far too long. Yes, I know there may never even be a Tom Brady without Bill. That's the harsh reality. It's the butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know if Tom drifts off into nothingness, sells financial services for the rest of his life, marries an average chick, settles down, has a son, couple kids, little white picket fence. We don't know, because so many coaches will never give the chance to that non-blue chip guy.
Mm-hmm.
That 6th-round pick doesn't get the chance from every single coach. So I give Belichick a hell of a lot of credit, because he gave Tom the chance. He rolled with him, and he obviously is one of the greatest game planning coaches of all time. But I feel as though Bill is going to be in Tom's shadow, and I don't think Bill's ever going to get another championship. I really don't.
I agree with you. I also do want to say I do think people forget how much of a middle finger it was to play Brady at that point in time. You were talking about Drew Bledsoe being in the second year of a $100 million contract.
Former number one pick.
You're talking about the guy that had led this franchise from complete obscurity into they weren't absolutely winning like 11 games or anything like that, but they got to a Super Bowl, sure. But it's amazing like what of a hard stance that was to play Brady at that time. People kind of forget. He started out 5-11 his first year, was 0-2 going into that move. I mean, that was a balls on the table, all or nothing.
Alex, can I ask you? So the defense in Tampa Bay went from one of the least disciplined teams in the league to being one of the least penalized teams in the league. Who do you think had more to do with that, Tom Brady or Bruce Arians?
Man, that's actually a tough one. I mean, I'd say it goes to Todd Bowles over the both of them.
Sure,
but I think that the belief in Tom Brady, it gives you a confidence, and I feel as though, it's a kind of like a leadership effort. Like obviously Tom, I would probably give the nod to there.
So because Bruce Arians is third in terms of what helps his defense best this year, and because Tom Brady is the system, that's why Bruce Arians is getting the proper amount of credit in my book.
Well, hey, I mean, we can't always all agree, right? I mean, I feel as though he needs more. He needs more credit. Not all the credit. I may have come on a little strong.
Well, you know what we're learning?
He needs more.
Apparently, quarterback is even more important than coaching. Like I've said from the beginning, it was 60-40 Belichick. That was very wrong. It's very wrong. Like the quarterback, and again, not every quarterback matters this much. Tom Brady matters this much.
Alex, anything else before we let you go?
No, that's all I got, guys. Love the show.
All right, awesome, man. We appreciate you checking in with us tonight. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, awesome. So great stuff out of Alex. We've got another one ringing through here. Hi, you're live with Open Season. Who do we got?
We got Justin from Charlestown.
Oh, there Justin.
God,
I know you're calling in long distance these days, though. All the way down in the Cape.
Yeah, you're right.
The balmy Cape where it's not snowing.
I just drove back down. Took me 3 hours. Lovely drive. Hey, so I wanted to talk about the Super Bowl. I heard Billy say the defense isn't getting enough credit, and I have to applaud him. For the first time, Billy is saying some correct things on the show. The defense, I don't know if anyone watched the first half in the Super Bowl, but did anyone feel like the Buccaneers kept getting really good calls and the Chiefs kind of weren't? And even in the Saints game, did we really feel like Brady was moving the ball that great, or did Breeze throw those interceptions and give the Bucs great field possession to score?
I mean, the question is the picks, but even if Brady gives Aaron Rodgers, who's presumably a better quarterback, 3 picks and 7 passes, if he only turns it into 6 points, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, Drew Brees threw the picks, but Tom Brady cashed them in.
Of course, no, and Tom Brady deserves the MVP. I really feel like this defense, the front seven, probably was the most underrated front seven in all of football this year. Obviously, they had a couple of players like Sue come in this year, which was nice, but their linebacking crew is the fastest I've seen in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And they had a great defensive plan, and the Chiefs decided they were too stubborn to change their plan. I just really feel like the defense deserves way more credit than is being played out. If you watch any of the NFL analysts, they're all saying like, man, this is the game plan to play against the Chiefs. They deserve way more credit. It's not all Tom Brady. Tom Brady doesn't just come there and play defense too. That defense played pretty much almost lights out since probably early December on.
You mean after Tom Brady called them out because he was tired of getting hit in the Bears game? That's when they stopped getting penalized, when Brady called them out.
How many times did Tom Brady get sacked this year? It's less than 20. It was one of his least sacked years in his career.
Fair.
Tom Brady, like their offensive line for what it was, they got a great draft pick at 14. They have great guards. The center is kind of questionable, Jensen. But he's not bad. Brady got sacked the least amount than he ever has. I think obviously players resonate to Brady more than they resonate to any other coach. Definitely Belichick, definitely Arians. He's Tom Brady. He's the greatest of all time. But he doesn't play defense. He plays quarterback. Defense deserves at least 40% of the credit for them winning the championship.
Who does? Who gets 40%?
The defense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the defense did a lot, but I do think you are just quit. You've had an axe to grind in terms of like Brady is not like the reason why they won, and I do feel like he doesn't play defense, but he got a lot of those guys to buy in. Don't you think that was like a huge, like just in terms of them playing more aggressive and having that belief, like it's like not like you're gonna have Jameis Winston who's gonna throw a pick every other time, regardless of what you do. Don't you think they at least put him in a position where they believed that and had a little bit more confidence? Like Devin White made a huge step from last year to this year. Completely different players.
I agree. I don't have an axe to grind against Brady. He's the greatest of all time. I love Tom Brady. I have a picture of Tom Brady before I go to bed every night. Kiss him on the lips. I love him. I'm just saying, to think that the defense doesn't get any credit for the Super Bowl run, not just this game, because granted, Drew Brees isn't Drew Brees anymore, but they pretty much made him look like a bottom 20 quarterback in the NFL in that game. And the first 2 times they played him, Drew Brees looked pretty good against them. The defense played a great game plan. I just think the news coverage of Tom Brady is the reason why. He had a lot to do with it, more than 50%. The defense needs to get a little love. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree with you. I mean, the defense did do a lot. I mean, they definitely did do a lot. I mean, you can't hold Mahomes to 9 points and say that they didn't. But I just feel like Brady did score 30-plus in all those games. Like, he also did his thing, too.
Of course.
And he did play on short fields, too. And Brady wasn't great in the Packers game. But
he was in the first half. He was unstoppable in that Packers game. That was the best I've seen him look maybe since the year we beat the Falcons. Like, he was just money every throw. And that Scotty Miller pass was unbelievable. He looks better now than he did 5 years ago to me. Like his ball, like the deep ball especially, I think they're going to win again next year. I really do. And the defense is going to get stronger, and all those guys are going to take discounts to come back to win one more chip with Brady.
Do you think they will? Like Gronk, AB, all those guys? You think those guys, like, I just feel like a lot of times you win a Super Bowl and it turns into a money grab. Like, everybody says that they'll take less, but a lot of times it's your opportunity to get paid. Like a guy like Fournette signed a 1-year deal. Like, which guys do you think?
Yeah. So I saw that Mike Evans already came out and said, like, because he has a lot of guaranteed money this year, and he said, like, I'll take less so other guys can get more. And Brady's contract next year is like fully guaranteed. I think he has a $10 million roster bonus and then a $15 million like guaranteed deal next year. So Brady's going to try to fix the number somehow to keep players like Gronk. He's going to come back. Fournette, I bet you he signed somewhere else, but they can. I think Ronald Jones is a decent back, and they'll probably bring another veteran in behind him. Godwin, I don't know. I mean, he's probably going to want to get paid, but I guarantee you AB's back. I don't know how many teams are going to want to take a risk on him. He'll probably try to test the waters and realize that, he can win another chip with Brady and probably still get like 3 years for, I don't know, 21 mil from the Bucks. Because Godwin probably is gone. He is going to get paid.
Yeah, I bet that. Let's see. Anything else before we let you go?
No. Just want to say, great show. You guys are doing great. And so really pumped that Brady won his 7th. Both Alex and I did not think this was going to happen. And it became a reality after the Saints game. I knew that this was going to happen, and I'm pumped for Brady for winning number 7.
Yeah. Do you put him above Jordan? I mean, before we let you go, do you put him above Jordan in terms of like best team athletes or?
Yes, I do, because he went to another team and won 7. If Jordan didn't go to play basketball, I think he'd have more than 6. We'll see. His story is not over yet. That's why everyone needs to wait till his story is over. I still think he can win one more, and if he's getting sacked less than 20 times a game, he could probably play a couple more years. And if you have a great offense around him, like he doesn't make mistakes, he's seen every defensive scheme that's ever been put in front of him. If he stays healthy, I could see him win 8, maybe 9. I don't want to say that definitely will happen, but I definitely could see it happening. I don't see why it couldn't.
Winning 9 would be so absurd. All right, man. Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you calling in.
All right, have a good show, boys.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, see ya.
All right, later. Yeah, some good stuff out of him. I mean, I just feel like, yeah, he wasn't like the biggest believer until exactly what he said there, and yeah, I mean, it just was like a big. I feel like last year, if you sat at this point and said, Tampa Bay is going to go to the Super Bowl, you would have sounded so stupid. And just as they started, they were 7-5. They lost to the Chiefs. And after that point, they never lost again. It was almost like the Pats from 2001, obviously completely different teams, but just in terms of the fire they caught and never going out again for the rest of the year.
There was the thought that they could run the table because their schedule eased up in the second half. They had both of the Saints games early in the season. They were 7, and they ended up 7-5. But what did they start off 6-3? So it's like before AB got there, the idea that they could catch fire was always there because the talent was always there. It was, can Brady ingratiate himself? And that's what it is. And that's where I'm saying it's not that Tom Brady played defense. This team, entire team, not offense, team, is in his DNA. And it wasn't earlier on in the season. And the biggest difference between those Saints games, the first 2, and the last one, is that this team had fully bought into Brady. That's what it is. Because if Brady had thrown 3 interceptions and 7 picks in either of those regular season games, because we saw him throw, 7 in those 2 games? Like, you know what they did? They turned him into points. In the playoffs, they didn't because that defense was on another level. They knew if we give that guy the ball back, we're getting rings. And it's very seldom that 52 guys look at one guy and say, he can get that for us. If we just do what we're supposed to do, if we just do our job, that guy can get it to us. And what does that sound like to you? Here. It sounds like here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. They've looked awfully Patriot-like for about 6 weeks now.
Yeah, and I just feel like you could really see the buy-in in terms of just they need the defense to play this well, and it was just like it didn't seem like any task was too big. They took all these quarterbacks that you're going to look at in the next 10 years or something, and from Breeze to Rodgers to Mahomes. I mean, nobody's probably had a tougher run. I mean, there have been tough runs, but I mean, just to go through 3 of the best quarterbacks all time.
I want to say Eli. Didn't he go to Lambeau? And didn't he face Brett Favre? And didn't he play us undefeated in one of those runs? I mean, look, it's obviously up there.
I'm just saying in terms of like that defense, being able to, if you told me that defense was going to pick off Rodgers a few times, if they were going to do this and do that and, hold Breeze to as many interceptions as he threw, I mean, they just made all these guys just look pedestrian and in the midst of MVP caliber years. Obviously not Breeze, but.
So it was the sixth best defense, number one rushing defense for the second year in a row, and I believe a top 10 passing defense. The number one thing that they did differently in the regular season to the postseason is the red zone defense. Straight up, you're not getting in the end zone. The last two games, you're not getting in the end zone.
Yep.
And it was huge.
And the thing for the Bucks too was their red zone efficiency in the playoffs. Also, it was like when they were in the red zone, they were scoring touchdowns like every time.
Because that's the Tom Brady effect.
Before we flip the page to the NBA, where do you stand on the Jordan Brady comparison? I mean, everybody wants to make it at this point just because of the 7 over the 6.
So this is where I loved that this could happen. To me, it catapults him over Jordan, but I take it one step further. Like in the Mount Rushmore of sports winners, where is he?
I mean, he's pretty much got to be the top. I mean, people are going to point out Bill Russell, but I don't want to just completely diminish his achievements, but I do feel like it was a time where the guys were just a lot less skilled that he was playing against.
He also has a gold medal, a 55-game win streak in college, and 2 NCAA. Look, you got to beat who you play, and at every single age, he also qualified for the Olympics in the high jump. It's a monster. Bill Russell's a monster. I think it puts him on the Mount Rushmore, though. I think it puts him right on that last block. I think Serena Williams is the best winner of my lifetime. Again, could she play with men? I don't know, but I know she beats the dog crap out of women. Okay, I know Bill Russell's up there, and I mean, what is his name? The Pocket Rocket for the Canadiens. I mean, he's probably up there. I mean, you start to get debatable. I think the only 3 that are up there, and this is where Brady's panel is debatable. I think it's Phelps, I think it's Serena, I think it's Bill Russell. As the only 3 people I've seen that I can definitively say are above Brady as winners. But he put himself over Jordan. He put himself in a different pantheon with that win.
And 2 of those people, too, also play in sports where you're not really on a team. So if you're talking about just team athlete, I mean, Brady's probably up there. Yeah, I mean, obviously Phelps and Serena, incredible competitors as well. But, yeah, I mean, Justin obviously brings up a good point, too, just in terms of Brady being able to possibly add on to, not done yet. If he were to add on 8 or 9, it's just crazy to think that it's just not done and just that, it continues to go on. Yeah, let's flip the page and let's get on to the NBA. We're going to obviously be ramping up the NBA, the NHL coverage over the next couple weeks, and it's going to be interesting. It's kind of like we're rechecking in back with the NBA. The first thing I probably want to talk about is LaMelo Ball, who's really caught a lot of fire. He became the only teenager ever to record a 25-plus, 10 assists plus, 7 threes made. I mean, obviously we're kind of creating some of our own stats at this point. But ESPN had the stat up the other day. He was the only teenager to be able to put up one of those lines. And over his past 5 games, all starts, he's averaging 22.6. He's averaging 8 assists, 7 boards. He's shooting over 50% from the three-point line over his last 5. He's just really, really taken the step. We've talked about him over the past couple weeks, but in this last week in particular, I mean, he has completely hit a gear where I didn't even know if he'd hit this gear in his entire career, let alone during his rookie season.
It's the 3-point percentage that you really need to be impressed by, because that's the biggest question mark. And I don't want to beat this to a dead horse because we talk about LaMelo a lot. He's been good. But this is what happens when you come in having played against pros instead of going to college. And I hate to beat that point. I really do. College is a wonderful experience. The tournament is awesome. I'm sure it's great to be a part of. Playing against professionals whose job it is to make what the bread for their family is playing a sport. Playing against those guys at 18, 19 better prepares you for this league. The reason he's ready is because he's been making his money playing basketball for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and I think you've got a great point there in terms of just not a moment being too big for LaMelo. You saw him when he got drafted, and they're like, is this something that's, surreal for you and all that? And he's like, I was born to do this. And just after all these games, just saying that he was born to do this. And, it just seems like no moment is really too big for him at this point. And he's just really hitting his groove.
I still don't see him where he needs to be in the defensive win shares category. I don't believe in analytics too much. I think kind of we've gone the other way in sports with that, but that's one that I think is really important. He needs to be an elite defensive player. I want to see. I mean, he's not going to shoot 55% from three, but can he stay mid 40s? Does it lead to winning? You know what I mean? Because John Wall's a thing. Like NBA players who put up numbers and don't win is a thing. So can that Hornets team maybe make the 8th seed? The East is not looking very dominant right now. There's a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you've also got a good point there in terms of, like, he does still get a lot of turnovers. He does still his win shares are not one of the stats where he's leading the league or anything like that right now. So he does get a lot of highlight plays. You know, he'll probably make like an off the back pass or throw it off somebody's head or something like that. You know, he's had some really good highlight plays, but he does still turn the ball over a lot and still hasn't really led to a ton of wins just yet. So we will have to see how that translates at this level for him as well, but just way above the curve as far as I'm concerned at this stage in his career. Boston, to talk about them for a little bit, they had a great win against the Clippers on Friday night. Don't know if you saw that one at all. In the first half, they do these win probability stats. I think the Clippers had a 96% win percentage at the half of that game. Celtics were down by 16, and they just come back. They have a great fourth quarter. Kemba really gets involved in that one. They played a pretty good game against the Suns the other day, but lose. The Suns have been streaking a little bit. Looking against one of the best teams in the NBA up to this point, the Jazz tonight, they've really got everybody healthy. How do you think they stack up with the Jazz?
This is a tough game for me to talk about because I really wish they could tie, realistically. What's bothering me about the Celtics is the same thing that's bothered me for like 6 years. We need somebody that can protect the rim. Tristan Thompson is not playing nearly as well as I thought he would, and Jeff Teague has disappeared. I still don't understand why Tice is here and Baines isn't. Like, can we get somebody who could kind of pretend to maybe block shots?
Doesn't it just make you wish that they did the Miles Turner trade? I mean, Tristan Thompson is fine, but he really has disappointed. He started out, his first few games, I was like, wow, this is really nice to have a guy like this, but I think he just can't quite play that center position that we really want out of him, be that shot blocker that we're really looking for, somebody that's going to stifle shots. And with Miles Turner blocking 4.5 shots a night, I just feel like every night I look at the box scores, I'm seeing this 24-year-old who's blocking 4.5, and we could have had him at a lower price. He's going to be more expensive this year, coming off a career year at 24. Going to be tougher to get a guy like that. It would have been nice if just getting rid of Hayward, we were able to bring back Miles Turner. And Doug McDermott potentially, too, who's having a good year off the bench.
Don't want him.
You wouldn't want him off the bench for this team that could use a little bench scoring?
Nope. No.
You wouldn't take him off the bench?
No. I don't want
They
him.
could use some scoring.
No, not unless they get rid of one of these young guards. Like, I'm not for just strengthening the bench for strengthening its sake. I'd like to be in the buyout market. Like, you know, like in hockey and in basketball, the buyout contenders usually win. They usually need a couple pieces, and they get it. Because in those sports, there's somebody with a bad contract who gets bought out and signs on for the minimum and is crucial.
Realistically, will the Celtics do anything with the trade exception?
No, because I mean, it's beneficial for us. But Danny Ainge will not lose a trade. It won't be close. If he's not overwhelmingly winning a trade, he just won't pull it off. I feel the same almost with contract negotiations. In the other way, in that I don't think he's ever negotiated a good free agent contract. I think he's just said, I know that I'm going to have to pay extra to get you to Boston, and he does so. I'm not mad at him for that. I'm just saying, with both things being true, I don't see us making a splash.
So, in the game tonight, I think if you're any type of expert or anything, I mean, all the experts are taking Utah. You give the Celtics any chance to hang tight with them, playing against Gobert, Mitchell.
Is Tatum playing?
Tatum's playing.
Is Brown playing?
Brown's playing.
We can win. Whenever the answer to those two questions is yes, the Celtics are going to have a legitimate chance to win the game. I mean, they're that good. And I'm sick of saying, look, Brown still has a way to go in terms of ceiling, but he may never get any better, and he's still an unbelievable NBA basketball player. I'd love to see him take another step, but I'm okay if he plateaus because he's a dog and a super talented player, and I just love watching him play. And Tatum, we already know how I feel about him and his ceiling.
Do you think the Celtics' 12-10 record right now is indicative of how good they've been? I feel like they got out to a real hot start at like 8-3, and then they've lost a decent amount of games getting down to this 12-10. I feel like they're better than an almost 500 team right now.
I think their best lineup is Brown and Tatum. I think because Kemba missed so many games early that when all three of them are healthy, I think it's only happened like 5 times, and they're barely over 500. I think by winning percentage, their most efficient lineup is with those two guys. Once you have Pritchard and Kemba and everybody, obviously that win percentage will go up. We're not a 500 team. And also, aren't we still like 4th in the East? That was my point. The East is wide open right now. Like,
it really is.
You got
Milwaukee, you got the 76ers.
And Milwaukee.
Milwaukee is figuring things out quietly over the past little while. Giannis and them, they are figuring things out. They didn't get out to the greatest start, but they are seeming to come along and kind of get into the Milwaukee that we know of.
They're a regular season team. They're going to hit their stride.
But that's my point also, is that with the 76ers, they could win 65 games, and I'd still be like, well, we're going to crush them in the playoffs. You know, even if the Celtics won 45 games.
We should both be calling the Pelicans and trying to get J.J. Redick. Philly should be doing
it. Or Steven Adams.
Boston should be doing it. I
don't know how high I am on J.J. Redick, honestly, though. Do you think he could just be too old at this point? Like, you're looking at it and you're like, is he too old? Is he just having a rusty season? You could throw all the chips in, and he could just be too old at this point.
Steve Novak played till he was like 34. Bryan Scalabrine played till he was 37. If you can shoot,
I think
you
J.J.
can
Redick
shoot.
is 36, isn't he?
Yeah, but he can shoot.
He hasn't shot well this year, though, is my point.
Sure.
Is he just old?
He hasn't shot, well, for the record. Okay, 2 questions. He'll shoot better when he's surrounded by better talent, and he's not the one shooter on the team. It's very easy to play New Orleans. Lonzo's not going to shoot. Zion cannot shoot. Let's get to Redick, and let's just put a wall in front of Zion. That's it. Let B.I. get his, and that's it. This team can't win. Shut it down. Phone it home. This team's not very good right now. On top of that, I think J.J. Redick is past Clippers J.J. Redick. Like, the days of J.J. Redick getting his own shot or being a 20 points per game scorer, that's over. But can he be better than James Posey was for the 08 Celtics? Can he be Antoine Walker for the Heat? Yes. J.J. Redick could be a valuable role player, especially if he's on a team.
Walker for the Heat.
I'll have you know that stretch 4 was really important for a team with 2 superstars who couldn't shoot the 3. But I digress.
I also want to digress. I remember I do remember a point in that season, though, where Antoine Walker went 2 months without making a free throw.
What do you do in the playoffs? What do you do in the playoffs?
Yeah.
No, but listen, if Redick gets here, he's what, the 4th option, the 5th option?
Yeah.
He'll be fine. He'll be fine coming off screens and doing that.
You wouldn't be at all concerned that you give up a younger piece for somebody that could just be a little too old, a little too battered up. Maybe just, yeah, it's like with guys that size too, they need everything to kind of be in line. You need your athleticism. It's like when you just lose some of those things. I mean, when Kemba's 36, I'm not expecting much out of him.
That's not fair. One of those is a much better shooter. Shooters age well. J.J. Redick, his game wasn't predicated on athleticism.
He's just falling off a table this year, though.
I understand, but a lot of that is his surrounding cast. He's because, again, the only thing that's gone isn't his athleticism. His ability to create his own shot is gone. Fine. Will he ever need to do that in Boston? Like Romeo Langford and Semi Ojeleye together shoot, 4.5 threes a game? I'd much rather have J.J. Redick shooting 4.5 threes a game. Take all their minutes, F that, give them to Redick. Like, I'm all for it. And what young player are we going to give up? We're not giving up any of the good ones for Redick. So any of the ones that we would give up, give them. Give them.
So did you happen to see the duel the other night between Doncic and Curry?
Yes.
I mean, that's just where the NBA is special. It feels like anytime Curry just goes off like that, you're just lucky to see. And I know we always talk about how sports records are going to get broken. Maybe at some point there's going to be guys, just with the way the 3 is emphasized, maybe there'll be a guy that comes along and is better than Steph. But it's just like when he's shooting this way, who's better than Steph? He just when he's shooting that well and just scoring like 50 easily, I think he had like 40 points with like almost a whole third quarter to play or something like that. I mean, it's really special when he's going off. But Doncic, too, is really finding his way also right now. Got off to a cold start, and really has to do a lot for that Mavericks team in order for them to get wins.
He's doing too much. We need Porzingis to be a unicorn or stop getting paid so much. At some point, it's piss or get off the pot.
I think it's closer to him not getting paid as much anymore.
I
think the unicorn stuff may be gone.
That's a fair point.
Just him being a special, the guy that we saw
a number
on
two
the
guy.
Knicks.
A number 2 guy. Can he be a number 2 guy? Can he get you 25? I mean, I want to say 20 and 10, but I don't think he'll ever be a 10 rebound guy. Can he be like 25 and 8? Can he give you Pau Gasol and Memphis numbers?
Shoots too many threes, too, for his size.
Sure.
Play a little closer to the basket when you're 7'3".
I want to say one thing about Steph Curry. Watching Steph Curry go off is different than any other superstar ever because there's a repetition to every other superstar that's put up that type of performance that is different from Steph. Like Kobe, you could call out 60 of those points. Dribble, step back, fake over the right shoulder, baseline. Same thing with Jordan. Shaq, dribble, drop, step, dunk. With Steph, it's like, oh, he's not really going to shoot that. Oh, he's going to shoot that. Oh, wow, that went in. It's different. Consuming a scoring outburst from Steph Curry is different. And it's similar with Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson has some of those quarters where it's just like, oh, wow. Like, that's different. Like, you did like 50-point quarters. Like, where did that come from?
Well, the thing that's crazy about him, too, is the thing that's crazy about Klay in particular, I think he had 11 dribbles in the game where he scored like 61 points or something. So it's just amazing. He doesn't even need to like put the ball, like he doesn't need any rhythm at all. Like he doesn't need to touch the ball, be involved. There's so many guys that need to get a bunch of shots, need to get their hands on the ball, need to be dribbling it around in order to, and it's like Klay can get 11 dribbles in and score 61.
I think he might be the best catch and shoot player I've ever seen. But again, Steph Curry, the handles make him unfair. That he pulled up from like the logo off of dribbling, and people don't know how hard that is. Like these are NBA defensive players who get paid a lot of money, and to make them look foolish like they're on rollerblades, and then pull up from 40 and shimmy in their face and turn around. I mean, it's interesting to consume from somebody who watched a lot of Kobe and Shaq and Jordan.
I just think, too, that I always kind of don't want to give a ton of credit to Curry. Like, I've never been the biggest fan or anything, but if you told me that he'd still be dribbling like this at 32, I mean, it just seems like his game is going to be able to extend a lot longer than I thought. I thought this would probably be a guy that by 30, we had already seen the best of him, and it seems like we could be seeing the best of him this year at 32. I mean, he could have, and as long as he shoots this well, he could probably score 20 for quite some time.
You're probably looking at the Durant effect because he's spent a lot of time in the postseason nursing injuries, minutes restrictions. I think without Durant, you don't have that luxury. And, I mean, what did they go to 5 straight finals? Like, that takes a toll on your body. There's a reason Klay Thompson, it got the best of him. There's a reason it got the best of Durant. There's a reason that
DeMarcus Cousins.
There's a reason you've never seen Draymond Green back to that because it takes a toll on you. Steph Curry, I think, of all those players, got to kind of conserve a lot of his stuff. I don't think we've gotten to see this usage rate from Steph Curry in a half a decade. It's been like 6 years since we've seen him need to be this effective for them to win. And that's awesome. It's fun to see. And for him to be able to pull it off in his latter stages of his career, awesome. Awesome to watch.
Any thoughts on Derrick Rose uniting with Tom Thibodeau? I feel like that is going to be a much more underwhelming story than people are trying to make that up to be. I mean, Rose is just a little bit too old. Like, it's a nice story, but the Knicks don't even really need him. He had done well a few years ago when he was on the Timberwolves. It was nice to see some of those performances, but I just feel like that was made up to be a little bit bigger of a story than, like, maybe this is a few years ago he joins up with Thibodeau, but I feel like the Knicks don't even really need him, especially with quickly what he's been doing.
We'll revisit Derrick Rose one day. I believe they're called summer shows, when all we have to talk about is baseball and hypotheticals. This is the non-story. And I wish it were. Like, I wish it were. Derrick Rose is an unbelievable story, and he's a meteor. That's what happens when it lasts like that. But this hasn't been a story, and he hasn't been good enough for it to warrant being a story maybe since 2012.
I guess I just feel like people actually talking about, like, people should have not even said anything about this, really, in terms of this being a story or not.
It's just, it can't.
Any mention of this was too much of a story.
Fair, because it's Derrick Rose. He's not very good, and I say that sitting in a restaurant. I'm no Derrick Rose, but he's so far from himself, and he's been that way for most of his career at this point because that's what injuries did to him. He's point guard Grant Hill. Like, it's sad.
I could still watch that post game though with Minnesota after he scored the 50-point game and was crying. I mean, that was just needles like for him to be able to do that after all those injuries, I mean, how many guys could go through that many injuries still put up 50 points? Like, I feel like he couldn't even do that in his heyday.
Kobe.
Sure.
I mean, Kobe's final game, he scored 60. That's after an Achilles tear, several broken fingers. Like, probably him, AI. But, I mean, the injuries got the best of him. Once he got a certain amount of injuries, there was no 50-point games coming.
Yeah, speaking of Kobe, I saw a Kobe Shaq interview the other day. It was really good stuff. And just Shaq kind of talking about, like, how much of a bum Shaq himself personally was. Like,
they regret it.
Not being as, like, he was like, I would take the whole summer off. Like, I would come to camp out of shape and just get in shape during camp because I knew I could. And just imagine if you had Shaq going through the type of, like, training regimens these guys do today where it's like a year-round thing. You're bought in. You're in the whatever chambers it is. I'm losing the word. Hyperbolic chambers. Just imagine if Shaq, and if there was any thought in terms of, like, trying to keep another 20 pounds off his frame or something like that. I mean, how good Shaq could have been if he had put in all the time.
You know what the issue is? Is that he was better than Kobe for the first 3, and then he won before Kobe. Like, he came out with that Kobe House My Ass taste, and then 5 years later, he's the first one to tell you he regrets not staying with Kobe. Like, it's funny how time will change your perspective on how things went. Like, Kobe wanted the best from him, and it was, not until he was a Celtic that he really started to be like, oh, man, I wish I listened to Kobe.
And when Shaq left and won that ring right away with the Heat, was there anybody who thought that Kobe was going to catch Shaq in terms of championships? No way.
No.
Like, he won that first. It was like, oh, he'll never catch. Like, I remember when they were playing each other for the first time, and they interviewed Shaq, and they were like, what do you think about going against Kobe? He's just like,
I don't know who that is.
He was like, Kobe's a Corvette. I'm a brick wall. Y'all know what's going to happen. Like, and everybody's like, I love Shaq, Like, people were not. Kobe gets looked on with this, like, really rosy glow. Like, even before he tragically passed and everything like that, I feel like when he retired, people just kind of. People really didn't like Kobe the last 3 years of his career. And people, because he was taking so much money with the Lakers, they weren't winning a lot of games. People really didn't like him when he first got Shaq off that team also. So many people, you kind of forget those times when Kobe was, like, hated.
Do you know what helps? Being right. Being found innocent of certain accusations, winning titles, having Shaq realize that, hey, I was wrong probably helps. I think
playing another 10 years at an all-star caliber level, too.
Winning 2 more titles. I mean, all those things help. And I think Kobe made a transition where he started to let people in towards the end of his career. So even though he was way overpaid and he crippled the Lakers' ability to build their franchise because he wasn't worth that contract, it became an albatross, I think his teammates still loved him. And I think everybody in the league still loved him. And I think people started to understand it was never about him being a dick. That's just his one way to motivate.
Yeah.
Some people have multiple ways to motivate, and that's their thing. He has multiple ways to win, but it's just with one mindset. He can win in multiple different things. He can take it to other avenues, but it's with that one mindset. And I think once he started to let people in, they started to understand that attitude was just attributed to that mindset, and that if they could put it aside and in a shoebox, it was going to lead to them getting the best out of themselves.
Totally agree. I just love seeing that interview too, like Kobe and Shaq. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of personalities like just the fact that those two were on the same team.
The same team.
Give me another duo you won over those two.
Nah, I ain't got one.
Yeah.
Back to tonight.
We got a minute to kill. Who do you think is going to win the NBA rebounding race? Do you think it's going to be Drummond or Capella? Capella has just been rebounding. Have you been paying attention? He's been rebounding at an absurd clip, and he's usurped Drummond for about the first time. Drummond's led the league in rebounds per game for the last 5-6 years.
He's going to win it again. And for the record,
no belief in Clint?
No, I've never believed in Clint Capella, and that Hawks team is an assortment of random pieces and an undersized point guard who's very good but doesn't play defense. I hate that team.
Yeah. Clint Capella also plays less than 30 minutes a night, too. I mean, for all those rebounds. I mean, he's getting like 15 rebounds a night in like 29 minutes.
High motor, low minutes. It leads to high numbers per minute, but there's a reason you ain't playing 40. Your numbers would look awfully similar with added 40 minutes.
Yeah.
That's why you don't play that many minutes.
Well, speaking of extra minutes, that is going to do it for the minutes that we have on this show. We got to get out of here. The restaurant is closing at 8, so we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We will catch you next week, same time, same place, except we'll be a half hour later. We'll go back to the normal show probably. But appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
I'm just not sure that Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate I've got Bryan Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a championship